Good morning. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see some of the faces your faces starting to tune in. Special welcome to everybody who's joining us this morning on YouTube and Instagram, Facebook too. I'm happy to see that we're having many people start watching us on these other platforms. We get your messages, and some of you are supporting us too online, so we appreciate everything you do. And more than anything else, we appreciate that our word is getting out into the community and the world. This morning, before I begin my lesson, which is being handed to me as I speak, this is Veterans Day weekend, or Veterans Day was a day or two ago. And often I do a whole presentation honoring the people who've come before, the people who've given themselves in selfless service. And I may do that again sometime this month, but I want to just think in terms of gratitude for all the people who have been in our lives, who've helped us, who've passed on. Our center recently lost a very important person to us, a senior minister. And I had another friend who called this week, and her brother had passed away, and yet another. So there's been some people that have made transitions, and I had a little poem that one of my teachers loved. It's very short, but I thought I would share it with you. And this is the perspective of people who study our teaching. And it's entitled Immortality, and no one really knows who wrote it, but here it goes. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am there. I'm not there, rather. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond on the glen, on the snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awake in the morning hush, I am the swift of flinging rush of quiet birds and circling flight. I am the soft star shining at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not there, I did not die. So I think that's very appropriate for this week, with several people making a transition, and in honor of Reverend Joyce in particular, with whom we will be doing a celebration for December 12th at 1 p.m. And that celebration will be very different in that she had, or the family of Joyce had, a special memory for her, a tribute, traditional readings. Our own Reverend Judith did the eulogy, and that was in a funeral home, and it was Friday, which I happened to be able to watch on YouTube, and our center sent flowers, and it was a beautiful service. So we're attempting to do something different on the 12th of December, which will be a 20-minute presentation of Joyce that we were so lucky to get filmed, right? And we're going to pair it up with some good music and make it available to anybody who needs or wants to hear it. And then hopefully, if all technology works well, we'll be able to send it to you in emails if you're not able to be there for the broadcast. So that's December 12th, 1 p.m. You can come here if you'd like to, if you're in New York, or you can watch it from your own living rooms. So again, do not stand at our graves and weep. We are not there. We are not asleep. And so we begin. This week, because of everything that was going on, I was a day or two behind in my presentation on lessons, and I wanted to find something that would be simple. because I knew the time was coming in on me. And I go to the archives, and there are lessons that are complicated, and there's lessons that are fairly simple. When I'm going for something that's easy to put together, or easier than some, I usually look to Raymond Charles Barker, because he had a way of synthesizing information and just putting it out there, you know. And so today, I'm drawing from a lesson that he did years ago that was entitled The Key, or The Key Idea. It's been done in a couple different ways over the years, but I think it's really the first time that I've worked with the material. So you have to bear with me just a little bit. It may not be perfect, but whatever hours I spent on it, it was to change some of the language around and keep the meaning, and had to pull out some of the references that were a little bit dated, but you know, his material is really great. He was really great. So let's go with it. So welcome again. You've already been welcomed, and any of you who are signing on late who would like to be part of our Zoom, which is a more intimate way of watching us, just send us a message into the chat room and we'll send you the information. And if you do that also, you can get a weekly electronic invite. Sometimes we have some good spiritual gems included, but do it that way if you can, and then you'll feel more a part of the interaction that always happens afterwards. We also have a community time after this lesson. We take a little break, and then we come back with a community time. Today it'll be Reverend Dr. Julia, who just opened us up, and she'll have something wonderful for us. So the talk, the key idea from Dr. Barker. It's a simple but important lesson, and it's my privilege again to bring it to you and to bring life into it, to breathe some life into it. You can listen to it yourself. I believe it's on our website. We are today's people with a great spiritual message, an idea for today's people. Our instruction is not necessarily based on any one religion, any one thing that's come before. In other words, everything we do is based upon today and what's going on with you today. And our teaching is open at the top and receptive always to new ways, new ideas. I mean, since he's written, you know, the whole world of the mind-body connection has occurred. You see so many examples, so many authors who've written about how we can heal disease through consciousness. Deepak Chopra, Amit Goswami, who was an associate of Deepak Chopra, wrote The Quantum Doctor, Quantum Healing, which really speaks of the kind of healing that we have taught historically that is possible. And we have the ability to heal, you know. But Barker had all that down long before all that mind-body information was readily available. He said, we teach new thought. We have no dogma, no real scriptures of any kind. I mean, we'll draw from Confucius or Buddha or Jesus, or we take our good where we find it. We may borrow from different places, and that was the gift of Ernest Holmes, to synthesize the best of the best. We know that there's one energy, and it permeates everything and everyone, and that we're all living on this earth, and it's the same energy that we live in. This is a teaching for today and the next generation. It's not for the past or of the past, it's current. For today's people, he said, and for the people who are not today, he says, if you're in a different belief system and you're all caught up in the past and you keep pulling it in, he says, there's plenty of that out there. That old dogma is still around, I promise you. And if that's what you want to celebrate and that's what you're after, you can go there. And he says there are quite a few people it may be appropriate for them to go there, because what we offer is somewhat revolutionary. Because in this teaching, we're teaching you to empower yourself in such a way where you really know that you can, as Ernest Holmes would say, you have executive power. And with this executive power, You can learn to use your life, change your life, heal your life. One of our proteges from this center was Louise Hay. She wrote the book, You Can Heal Your Life. You can do it. So if you're in a paradigm of the past, there's places you can go that will stay right there. But if you want to heal and you want to expand and you want to grow, this is the right teaching. We are a today people. This is the right idea. So what is this new idea we talk of? And I am speaking of, he asked that morning. This new idea is that whatever life is, you are, right? You are it. Whatever life is, it is creative. Dr. Barker reminded me of our own Reverend Theo, because she often says these very same words. The next sentence, I thought, what came first? Reverend Theo and Barker will always say, you are creating life, whatever life is. Life is love, and you are love. So if Theo's on the call this morning, this is to you also. Whatever life is, it is God, and you are God. It's that simple. You are the whole thing. You're going to say, well, in that case, then why do all these negative things happen to me in my life? Why did I break up from my boyfriend? Why did I get into these terrible fights? Why did I lose my house, my apartment? Why did all this, and why did you could go on and on and on. When he says it's all simple, you're the whole thing, then people will go there. And sometimes they'll have a tough time with that. And then he went on to say, well, I'll tell you about that later. That comes into the second part. He says, because I'm going to tell you, I ponder these questions myself, regarding myself. And he says, well, let's start by relaxing and taking some of these ideas into our subconscious mind. And he said, I'll do it in the first person so that as you hear it, it becomes your own frequency to yourself. And it goes, I am a today person. And he's hoping you say these things to yourself in the future. I am a today's person, now updated in the 2020s. I am in today's consciousness. I'm not the child that has grown up and become adult. I am a person of today with today's mind. I'm releasing the past. Now there's emotion when I say it. Knowing that there is one God, one mind, one spirit, one truth, one love, one intelligence. Knowing that this intelligence functions in me, through me, and as me right here and right now. We are today's people, planning today and tomorrow. I wonder how many of your friends and loved ones are planning a good tomorrow. I wonder if you're planning a good tomorrow. Most people aren't necessarily planning a good tomorrow. And he went on to explain. He said, many people, and he said more than people like us, he says many people are truly prophets of doom. And I look at them and I'm always expecting something better to happen to them, because this is my goal as a minister, this is my goal as an inspirational speaker, is I expect. And I'm knowing the truth of people and that there's better life available for them and to them. Because that's what we teach, that's what we practice. There's always something better that can happen, will happen. And then he drew on the famous song and poem that they always read at First Church, which some of you are very familiar with. We build a new tomorrow. We draw the pattern clear. We make our plans with wisdom, for our mind is ever here. Our thinking makes our future. Our actions pave the way. We build a new tomorrow on patterns formed today. So we're speaking this morning on the key idea. It's a simple, great Barker lesson. It's not one of the more complicated ones, but it's just as important, just as profound. It's good to be here with you. And I can see some of you, Reverend Judith up there, and got some people in the audience. Nice, nice, nice. And we invite you to come back physically, all of you. Those of you who feel safe to travel, vaccinated and everything. So the question comes up for this particular lesson: what one single thing would I select as being the most important entire idea of my life? And he said it becomes very obvious. The key idea for you has to be yourself. All right? You're the most important thing, and you're the key to everything. And so he went on to explain a little bit about it. He says, I am the key to the whole thing, at least as it comes to my life. And you are the key to the whole thing, at least as it comes to your life. The greatest single concept you can have about anything is yourself. Now that's a huge statement. Years later, Louise Hay worked with that whole idea and wrote an international bestseller. You know, you can heal your life, you can improve everything and anything, but you are the key to your own life. He went on to comment, he said, meditation has been the thing since the 70s, the 80s, and beyond. It's very good, it's great, because it's going to make people become aware, if they meditate enough, that they are the center and the circumference. You know, it's all about them sitting there in their meditation. You are the center and the circumference of your whole story. So he thought meditation was great, and the country was moving more and more in that way. And he said, these folks are going to become aware of what they really are if they do it often enough and they center themselves and come to a place of spiritual awareness, God consciousness, however you want to language it, self-realization. Centering yourself in meditation can help you get an idea of what the individual really is. We do it through spiritual mind treatment. The first step of treatment is recognition, which is born out of a meditation where you sit and contemplate. I recognize and I know that I'm one. And let that information fill you up, and I'm connected. And you sit with that for a moment or two until you can sense it and feel it. Centering yourself in meditation can help you get an idea of what you really are and what you're connected to. And that's the whole aim behind it. It's what every prophet, he said, is trying to teach. Any way they're trying to teach it. Any savior that's been here, there's been prophets and saviors and wise women and wise men, mystics. No matter what book of philosophers, they're always getting back to this, that you and you alone are the key idea to your experience. And he said, I am the key idea maker in my life. Now you might think, and people do, because you listen to them, about all the things that are happening to them. You know, like somebody's done me wrong, this has happened, that's happened, and they keep languaging that way. And they will keep talking about their painful experiences. And it might be better to think about things in terms of, many of these stepping stones, those of us who are adults and been here a long time, we can look back on our lives and we can think, oh my God, all these things happened, but I'm stronger for every last one of them, right? I've grown accustomed to saying that the situations in my life, are there to, are really life's gifts and lessons. Or the circumstances in our lives do not have consciousness, we have consciousness. So though we may have brought some of these challenges into our lives, they've been there as lessons and stepping stones. So Barker said, I'm either creating negative situations in my life or I am accepting them, either or. And he went on to quote from the New Testament. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. The scriptures say the rain falls on the just and the unjust. And why does trouble come to me? He asked the question again. And I will tell you why trouble comes to you. His answer was, he says, because when I'm going through trouble, I'm usually expecting trouble. He says, it just boils down to that. I don't want trouble, but I'm expecting it. So the key idea for today is, if you want a successful today and tomorrow, start paying attention. Start listening to what you are expecting. Because if you're fearful of all kinds of things happening, that's an expectation, right? So what are you imagining? What are you imagining is going to happen? And what are you expecting? What are you imagining? I remember, not from Barker, but years ago, they spoke of the word fear, and they broke down each letter. Fear is false evidence appearing real. And yet we can go there, and human beings go there, and it's disabling. What are you expecting again, he asked. And what are you imagining? Every Thursday, I ask in this group, we do a Louise Hay group on 7 on Thursdays. I ask people, and they don't have to answer the question for me, but I ask people, what's it been like being you this week? What is it that you've been allowing yourself to, ponder and think and all of that? Because that really speaks of your expectations, and you do have the ability to change those conversations around. So Dr. Barker says, if you probe just a little and do some serious inquiry and work on this, you're going to realize that you expect trouble in different areas, and you imagine trouble. And he says, many people, that's all they think about is the things that are going to happen to them. And that's a little bit of the old idea of the Chicken Little, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. You've got to, for your own sake, stop that type of stuff that goes on inside of us. And he commented, you go to the news. Now that's really an interesting place to go every day, because they don't put good news on TV, or rarely. I mean, it does happen, but you don't hear it often. Usually what you're hearing are the problems of the day. So he said, most people expect trouble, and they imagine trouble, and they turn on the news habitually, and there's very little good news to be seen. And he commented the week before, there was a person that was in the class and said something somewhat remarkable. And the statement was, with everything that we know about holistic health today, with everything we're learning about nutrition and meditation, the mind and body connection, mental health, positive messaging that we've learned to do through our affirmative prayers, he says health is not so much of a miracle anymore. He says disease is more the anomaly, or more of, what the woman called miracle. He said it shouldn't happen so much. He said, do you hear me? Disease should not happen so much. And he responded, you're right. Disease really shouldn't happen so much. With all that we know about health, the mind-body connection, prayer partnering, journaling, getting more exercise, disease should not happen so much in this age. Then the miracle, he thought, is not health. So why did people on the earth get sick? And he said we could take this question into any area of our life. There shouldn't be so much sickness. He didn't think there should be all this disharmony and every other thing if you bring all this into your life and understand it. Here is the key idea again. You go, I go wherever my mind takes me. And I hope people will take that home with them today. You're going to go for today and tomorrow wherever your mind takes you. And your expectation and imagination are the keys to everything. So it's like, what am I talking about? What am I expecting? My expectations and my imagination are going to bring everything to me. So you know what? Here's a suggestion for today. He said, watch people, Excuse me. Watch how they think. Watch how they talk. Watch how you think. Watch how you talk. Become an observer. You see, when we talk, we create. And we give ourselves away all over the place too. Whenever you see a lot of command phrases, and that of course caused me to remember Louise Hay, who had a real problem with the word should. Wherever you see a lot of command phrases, like should, must, got to, all that, any of these reveal a lot about someone or yourself. Dr. Barker said most people can only guard their tongue for so long. Most people are wearing a mask for a while. Like, we're trained to be polite, we show up, we dress up, we're human beings, we're doing the best we can. But, whatever the social mask that we have, we can only keep it in place for a while, right? He says, who you are gets revealed. It just does. Eventually, the truth comes out. I mean, you see how people form relationships, they love and everything like that, and everybody's doing their best, right? Because it's what we do. But eventually, they get to know you, or you get to know them. And here's the thing, you can change, you can clear things up within you. You know you can in this teaching, right? But you got to work on it a little bit. You have to cancel. First of all, let me correct myself. You don't have to do a darn thing, okay? Nothing's required here. But you could work on hijacking some of those conversations that are somewhat self-defeating. So you can change, and you can clear up your thinking and your consciousness. So you do this negative thinking less and less, and be in greater harmony, and be the real you, and be more real. So I laughed in the next part, because I didn't even know if I would say this part, because he had somewhat of a sense of humor. He says, I don't like people around me always smiling. I thought, oh, goodness. He says, I'm always wondering about their motives. What's behind those frozen smiles? What's back of it? And he says, I've learned that they've learned to manage their face. And he says, I wonder what they're doing with their mind. And I commented, this is him, I don't like these people at all. And he said, I like a natural smile. I want people to be around me who are authentic and real. And he was especially concerned with the people he called spiritually minded, who were always smiling. And he says, I don't always smile myself. I don't smile all the time, I don't smile half the time. And he said, I don't really usually lose my temper. He says, it's been years since I really lost my temper, which is a good thing, he says, because when I lose it real good. So he was a character. And then he went back to his own talk. He got a little bit more serious. He said, here's the key idea again for us to contemplate. What do I imagine? What am I thinking? What am I expecting? Because this is going to determine the whole thing. He says it's very simple, but it's also a little bit tricky. Because you are the key to your own story. That's essentially the whole thing for today. You are the key to your own story. Now, some of you, he said, do not like hearing that. And we know. But it is still our responsibility here to present that information over and over again, to teach you truth and not present ideas that simply make you feel good. Other teachers have said the same thing in my life. They'll say you are caused your own experience, right? You're the key to your own story. Again, that's Barker today. You're quickly writing the chapters of your life. I know I am. And as you get a little bit older, you don't know how many more chapters you got to write. But you're writing the one you're in right now. And I have a dear friend years ago who was an attorney. And she will always say the final chapter has not yet been written. So it doesn't matter what you've done so much, and where you've been. I will add everything, and all of it's been a blessing in some kind of way. And you're right in the center of your story right now, and you can you can start it all over today and write another chapter. Maybe it's the last one. Maybe it's not. But you can and you are writing it. You're quickly writing the chapters of your own book. And it isn't finished yet. And that's the exciting thing, because you have power. That's what Holmes said. In you and through you. There's power for good, and you can use it. So we come to this teaching to celebrate the fact that we, as Barker would say, yesterday ended last night, and we can start it all over right now. It doesn't matter. Every resentment we've had this past week, every fight, every tough situation, if you're facing any type of dis-ease or disharmony, you have the ability right now and today to do it differently, to make a new beginning, to start a new chapter. Barker, Reverend Dr. Barker said, "No one can operate my life but myself." He said, no, they can operate it if I let them operate it. So there's a whole bunch of us who've been in those situations where we have deferred to girlfriends, boyfriends, parents. I mean, the list goes on. And, we basically let people decide for us. So no one can operate my life but myself unless I let them do it. Now, if I let them do it, then again, it's my responsibility. In fact, they haven't done it. I've allowed them to do it. And I suppose there's always occasions when we do let people run our lives. And he said, I think that might be the case of many people. I don't know. But if someone does run your life, you have arranged it to be that way. So he's wanting everybody to know that we are responsible for our lives. You've arranged it rather conveniently that way, because then you have somebody to blame, right? Then you've got somebody to blame for your own mistakes. You could say, well, my husband told me to do it, or my parents, or whoever, just whoever. So if you're doing that, there's a modern day term, it's called, in therapeutic circles, you become other referred. You don't think for yourself, you're letting other people decide for you. The thing to be very aware of is when you're letting someone run your life, it is because you have agreed. You've entered this contract of some kind, a social contract. And if someone runs my life, it's because I am either ignorant of what life really is, right? Life is all about you. Or I want it that way. Now, we teach here our lives are spiritual, and our life reality is creative intelligence. Okay, so my life reality is creative intelligence. I am one with creative intelligence. Intelligence in action. You are each one with creative intelligence. In fact, you're one with intelligence in action, mind in action, emotion in action. All of it is God in action operating through you. You have it, and I have it too. You have it in you, and I have it in me. And it's a free gift, and it's a great gift to realize that you have this thing in you that responds to you. We didn't select it. We were born with this tremendous gift. Our precious life is intelligence in action. Our precious life is mind in action and emotion in action. It is cause in action. It's organic. It's a part of you. And it is mind using, it's mind in use. And it's using and responding to you. He commented that you don't need to use it, of course. I don't have to be consciously aware of anything, right? I can sit back and just join the crowd, turn on the news show every day and get all whipped up and just find issues to get myself all railed up about. I remember when I was in college at Boston University, wherever there was a protest, I was part of it. It didn't even matter what we were protesting. Find me a fight, find me a protest, I'm there protesting. I wasn't thinking for myself as much then. Mind is using everything you're thinking, right? Again, you don't need to use it. You can just sit back and join the crowd. Ain't it awful? And just do all that. He said, I can sit back and join the majority who accept that the fact that life is difficult. You can do that. You can just really be part of the majority. See, this is not an average teaching. It's not for average people. It's for people who understand that they are the cause to their own experience. Some think life is hard. And he said, I don't, not at all. I don't believe life is hard. Not at all. I don't believe any of it. He says, that's what the crowd thinks. And the crowd, according to Albert Camus, is always wrong. The masses are always wrong. And he said, the mass thinking will impose identity, names, and all of that. Many, many supposed authorities will be out there pronouncing all kinds of things, right? The crowd, the politicians, the gurus, the professionals of every kind. So when I say to you, I don't go along with any of it, people get irritated. I don't think the world is going to pot, he said. But you see, this great group out there, they're perpetuating a lot of this. One of the world's greatest teachers, Barker, said, he's referring to Jesus, I am not of this world, because he knew he couldn't work with the world thinking. This is one of the great gifts of this teaching. For me, it hit me squarely with Ralph Waldo Emerson, probably in my 30s, who challenged us to be original thinkers. I remember the phrase that I love, God help us when a thinker is let loose upon the planet. It's like a conflagration going out into the city where nothing and no one is safe. Because then you're really thinking for yourself. Now, you might be considering different points of view because you're educated and you want both sides of every story. But God help us when a thinker is let loose upon a planet, because, my God, this woman, this man is there really, they're caused to their own experience. They're not just sucked into every story. Each of us are born to be individuals, and we have a connection to everything that's real and true. So one of the great teachers, he said, proclaimed, I am not of this world, because he knew he couldn't work with the world thinking and say, he couldn't work with the world thinking and say what he needed to say authentically. So all right, back to the point, today's topic, the key idea is yourself. What happens to you, and what happens to you today and over the next 5-10 years, I can't determine that for anybody. You can't determine it for me at all either. Our day-to-day state of consciousness is the factor. Our inner dialogue, which I talk about every single Thursday night at 7, is the factor. The day-to-day consciousness, the inner dialogue, is the factor. And he commented, it's not hard on Sunday morning, at the time Tully Hall are here in the Upper West Side, seated at the center or in your own living room. It's not hard to be full of cheer when you're being reminded of truth or when you're sitting in meditation. There's a lot of you sitting and watching the lesson, no longer Tully Hall, but on Instagram today, YouTube, and you're taking it in. It's rather easy, right? Because you're focused on the message, right? And during the week, though, it takes effort. During the week, we have to pay attention. We have to be guardians at the gate and watch our consciousness and watch what we respond to and react to. Even this afternoon, after you get all fired up here and reminded, you might have to pay a little attention come 4 or 5 or 6 in the evening too. Because it's always easy to slip into negativity or negation, or what we call stinking thinking. It's very easy to go there. And he said, I'm not talking about casual negativity or negation. He says, because every last one of us do that to some extent. He said, I'm talking about deep-seated negativity that's been there. It's a part of our consciousness and old training. That's the stuff that really we want to let go of and find a way. And we have all kinds of ways here if you stay with us in our classes. That's the stuff that I won't say have to worry about, but that's the stuff we need to be aware of, because that's the stuff that kind of like tanks our ship. You can be around the teaching, but in the end, we want to practice the teaching because we want to level up, we want to soar. There is a creative, sustained intelligence. It's operating in you. You have this internal guidance that's always wooing you and trying to get your attention. We invite you to begin to understand that you are in control of the whole thing. He asked a question next. How do I get what I want, as they say? And he said, you have everything you already believe. You must realize, in general, people do not want to change their minds. So if you're living in a world and you're trying to talk to people about our principles and invite them to change, he says the first thing to realize is most people don't want to change their mind about anything. In general, they don't want to change it even remotely. They just hope that everything will be all right. Okay? We all hoping for the best. And he said, hope won't do it. Hope won't do it, at least not alone. You see, I think being intelligence needs to be directed intelligence. And I thought about that a bit yesterday as I was working with his words. He thought life being intelligence, life is all about creative intelligence. He said it needs somehow to be directed. Because you have all the intelligence in the world and access to it, right? But for it to change for you, it needs to be directed. The children of religious science, at least back 20 years ago, were taught in a program, Quick Start. You've heard me talk about it before. There's a stagecoach. And the power is represented by the stallions up front. And the coach represents our comfort zone. We're in the coach. We're directing wherever it goes by means of our thoughts and our thinking. But the invitation for children, and I guess for us, is to get out of our comfort zone of that coach and walk forward and get up on that platform and use the reins. You know, that's Holmes who said there's power for good in the universe greater than you, of which you are a part, and you can use it. Well, Barker is saying you're part of this energy, this life. It's intelligent, and it needs to be directed to intelligence. Otherwise, it's just going to keep going wherever it goes. Any of the beliefs inside of you keep creating circumstance after circumstance. He says, and that means some planning, some scheduling, some visioning, getting clear. Remember drawing the pattern clear, as we started out with? Otherwise, he thought there's no real great reason for continuing to live on the planet. Unless there are deep-seated motivational ideas, reasons, planning, scheduling, because you're here you have the power to create. So I guess he's encouraging all of us to begin to use it. Begin expecting, right? Life is never going to move itself. You are the director. You're the one who's going to write that chapter, and who is writing the chapter that you are currently living. You are the operator, and I invite you today to take the responsibility and begin to create, this greater experiences. He says most people dodge all this. A lot of people are habitually blaming the world, the economy, the environment, the politicians, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, their fellow man or woman. He says, you're as good as anything. He says, but I invite you really to look in the mirror. He said, because when I look in the mirror, I can see what is really the cause in my own life. And I'm continually projecting everything of what I am and what I am about. He says is projected. He says, I like to look in the mirror. And he says, I'm not really looking at my face or paying attention to the wrinkles or whatever is there. I'm looking back of that face, at that person, that consciousness, to the seat of my very consciousness. I'm looking at that person because this is the whole consciousness. This is me, and I need to acknowledge that I'm creating my life. And that's what every mystic has always been in some way trying to show us. We have always read the mystics with great interest. I know I used to. And because they're communing with life and they're seeing God in everything, right? As you develop a more mystical approach to life, you see the good even in what would be the bad. The teachers, the great teachers, have always said that it is the thinking, feeling nature of us, of the individual. That's what we really are, this thinking, feeling nature. Your body and your experience are secondary. And people, as you know, they'll listen to great ideas for about 10 minutes. He says, so sometimes short talks are perfect because the attention span for most people, not too great. And then he thought of the great Sermon of the Mount, which many of us have heard from whatever religion. Everybody's heard it, right? He says many scholars don't think it was ever really a one. The sermon, in other words, created from many different pieces and statements. But he said, let's just say it was spoken from the beginning that way. And he said, I wonder how many of the people listening way back when, if they were listening, 20 minutes afterwards would have taken any of it in. He said, not many take in his talks. Not many contemplate these ideas and practice them. He says it's all beautiful words, and they're quickly forgotten. As you engage in this teaching more and more, you learn that it's a practice, and you keep working at it. Every Thursday night, I'll say things like, stop. Wherever you see yourself going there, stop and turn it around. And you can. Wise men and wise women throughout the ages have always spoken of the truth. There's always been the idea of the lighted lamp in the midst of darkness. As you tune into these classes on Sunday and Thursday, you'll always be reminded of the light and encouraged to turn to it and turn it on. There's always been in every generation someone who could see the light and who would speak of the light. He said that light is still here and it always will be. Isaiah, he quoted next, said, this light wouldn't stop. Even with all the negative things happening in your life, it doesn't stop us from seeing, and we can always reclaim it. If your life has been really hard and you've somehow created a real mess, you can turn to it, and it will always be there. That's ultimately the story of the prodigal child, as you all remember, who's often wide in the weeds, air of everything, and lost. And as soon as he turns to it, the Father comes rushing to him. We can always turn to the light. And he said, I'm using light in the idea of spiritual illumination. We sense that there's more to all of this when we get up in the morning and we go to work and we come home at night and go to bed. He said this is really a bad phenomenon because a lot of people are just living their lives rotely. They're not thinking, they're not in new moments, they're not in appreciation. And he said that routine, in my opinion, is hell. Right here and now, he says it's hell for a lot of people. They go home, they have dinner, they fall asleep in front of the television. He said, God, that's not life for me. That's not being creatively alive. And he said, we can do better than that. He didn't think that was experiencing the joy, the being. So he said, these great people of the past, all of them, and he named a few, have said, watch. Because the reason why there is an idea is because there is a creativeness within you. And any of the things you desire, really, you can have. In fact, if you're alive, you want to keep waking up to the greatness or reminding you of the greatness and the possibility. So let's come back to the lesson again, because he had digressed. The key idea always is you. I am cause to my own experience. I am the light and I am the illumination. And the great men and the women that have come before all have handed that information down to us. Ernest Holmes handed it down to us. Louise Hay and her work reached half the world, it seems. Millions, if not hundreds of millions, saying the light and the power are yours. You are creating your life. And all of these, going back right through the centuries, have said that their individual names are not really that important. But what they talked about and what they spoke of is important. I remember different teachers who said, I'm not that important, but what I'm teaching is of great value. Barker said, I don't have any interest whether anybody knows of me 100 years from now. He said, it isn't the least bit important. He said, I don't care at all. And he says, any good teacher of this teaching really doesn't care about that stuff. He said, it's utterly unimportant. The important thing today, and it's something we want to share with you, and we're trying to help people. He said, first of all, I have to market the center so people can find their way here. He says, but it isn't me that it's important, it's the teaching that's important. Any of the people before, they're all gone, but the teaching's important. He says, life is intelligence in action, backed up by creative emotion, and it's always expressing itself. So I guess what he's having me communicate to you is to think of yourself as a center of God activity, a center of intelligence. And when you have your emotion backed up and you're using this intelligence, you're going to express your life creatively and wonderfully. We're always expressing ourselves. When you're pleasant, when you're unpleasant, when you're loving, when you're hating, you're expressing yourself. And he says, I do the same thing. He says, if I'm doing me and I'm really connected and being who I am, you'll see it. He said, none of us can stop being the cause becoming effects. So whatever you're doing or whatever I'm doing, it's going to have effects. You are all cause becoming effects. Now that's kind of like a quite science of mind term. Each of us are cause becoming effects. So you're like a center of God activity. You're creating life all over the place. And we invite you to take that thought in today. I'm always projecting. Each of you are always projecting. I can control it when I want to. If my emotions become disturbed, he says, really, I'm very good. But when I lose it, I really lose it. And when I become disturbed, I can't control it. I can't direct it. That's why when I know sorrow and I'm in a bad state, I'm projecting it. And when I know joy, I'm projecting that also. And if I were to know pain, I would project it because I am always cause becoming effects. I am always this experience. Now again, each of us can learn to control it. I'm going to ask you a question, each of you today. Can you control it? Are you able to control your life? And the answer to that group, he says, some of you are controlling it to varying degrees, but we don't control it, he thought, creatively enough and as well as we could. We get off on side issues and tangents. We have this great teaching and we forget about it. We sometimes respond to negative trends. You could be communing with the greatest minds that have ever lived, if you hear me say from time to time. But we get sidetracked, right? And then all these negatives start coming in. So as you come into this teaching, this is the job that you've taken on. It's learning to be responsible for your thinking and creating your life. He thought it was easier to discipline your body, to get slim, trim, and whatever else. It's easier to do many things than it is to discipline your mind. It's easier to work with your finances. It's easier to work in many things. Much, much easier. I'm telling you, the center of this whole thing is your mind. In truth, with all of our stories, there's nothing ever really outside of ourselves. Again, the center of the whole thing is your mind. You never get away from it. Now he says, I can creatively dodge a lot of things for a short period of time, right? And he said, I probably do. I'll dodge it, here and there. But in the long run, it will be what I have created it to be. You can't get past consciousness. There's a phrase for whatever teacher. You can't shortcut that process. The use of your mind is ultimately what plays out. Just as I have programmed every other area of my life, I make sure to program my consciousness. I mean, you've got like this power, again, like the children with the stagecoach. You've got raw power, and you can learn to take the reins and direct it. Because I happen to believe in what I teach, and I happen to believe what the great men and women who preceded me have taught. What they said, what they wrote, the way they acted. I refuse to let my life be stupid. I thought, my goodness, this was him way back when. I refuse to let my life be stupid. Now, I had a great teacher some 20 years later who put on a marquee, "Don't die dumb," and I was thinking this weekend, I wonder if he got that idea from Raymond Charles Barker. I refuse to let my life be stupid. And I wish no thought inside of me would say amen to that. Release the need to be what he called stupid. Just say to yourself, I refuse to let my life, my peace, be in the hands of others. I refuse to let my life and my peace be in the hands of others. That causes me to remember the words of Terry Cole Whitaker. What people think of me is none of my business. I refuse to let my life, my peace be in the hand of others. You have the power to have dominion over your own thoughts. I am intelligence, acting with intelligence, in intelligence. Because the whole universe is a system of intelligence. I am intelligence, acting intelligently upon intelligence. The whole thing is here. This energy, this whole thing is consciousness, and it's in you responding to you. And consciousness is the awareness that we have, the experience plus the capacity to project this experience. So we're not going to have a stupid life. And he said, and hopefully we're not going to have a dull life. Dull. He used that word a few times. Didn't like dullness. Why would you have a dull life if you caused your own experience? You can create amazing things, right? And he commented, I know so many people who need some stimulation to get out of that dullness. Stirring up wonderful inlets and outlets within you. Stirring up the gifts of God that are there. Spirit is always wooing you, hoping you stand up, wake up, and start expressing, start thinking for yourself, right? You'll be amazed when you start up. Stay plugged into these teachings, because we're just going to keep fanning the flames of how wonderful you are and the power that you possess. And I suppose he was thinking of Paul the Apostle, right? When Paul was writing and thinking of all the people that were so pious and everything, he was talking about the old order, he was suggesting for everybody to stir up that gift that is within you, because that is life. It is your life. And it's exciting to have the realization that you have this connection and this power. You are the key. I am the key for my door. Each of you are the key for your door. And then he said, I am the light of the world in my world. And he suggested for all of you to realize you are the light of the world in your world. And I'm the salt of the earth for my world. And each of you are the salt of the world for your own world. I am the beginning and I am the end. And each of you are the beginning and you are the end. The cause that's becoming the effect. You're the whole thing. And the whole thing is here in you. And he famously always said, yesterday ended when? Last night, right? And this is a moment, it's a great moment. And when you leave here, you're going to have this, and he wants you to keep reminding you of this. So I can set up tomorrow, and I can say, all right, This is great. This is good. And this is going to be good. And convince myself that it's good. And you can go to work, and he says, and you lose it a little bit. You can go into work, and he said, you can always tell the mood of your supervisors when they come to work. He said, do you realize that? Always, you can tell. The way the employer walks in the door, because the employees always know whatever it is projected. He said, but they'll think about what the boss is doing. But what they don't talk about and they don't realize is when they walked in the door 2 minutes before, they too were projecting. We're always projecting. And they go over their desk and they say, oh my God, another morning. So the thing to remember here is that you are always cause becoming effect. Now again, I have to repeat, why do these negatives seem to be happening to me? And it is again, like I said in the beginning, because the negatives happen because I expect them or I accept them. And he says, I don't want to do that. So I really want to get a handle on these expectations because I either expect them or I'm accepting them. I don't want to plan on evil or any form coming in my life anywhere. So I really want to stand on consciousness and proclaim greatness and really begin to practice and work this teaching. Now you're going to say, what about you? You're shutting your eyes to what the facts are. And he says, nope, not at all. I'm not shutting my eyes to a darn thing. I know what's going on in the world. I read 2 newspapers. Like today, I think I watched 2 television shows because they have completely different takes on the same information. He said, I read 2 newspapers most every day. I usually know both sides of the arguments. I know about the news. Sometimes I don't watch it at all because, again, there's no good news. People try to convince me, and he says, I, for the most part, know what's going on, and I'm not going to have it go on in my world. So that was the great line there. With all the stories that are being circulated everywhere, he thought he knew what was going on. He said, but I'm not going to have it going on in my world. Not at all, because I am the key to my own experience. He says, I'm not shutting my eyes to the facts. Today, for example, we're dealing in a world post-COVID. There are facts out there, and there's a lot of fiction. So we'll never tell you what to do here, by the way. But the thing is, we would always hope that you're educating yourself, and we trust that you're going to come to your own right conclusions. I don't suggest you listen to everybody. You have that which is within you that always knows. We don't accept the opinion of everybody as true. And he says, we know with news, good news doesn't sell. So we need to learn to be discerning, personally discerning, because there is that which is within you that will get to the truth and know the truth. We don't teach everybody to run around living like we're in a world of utopia. He says, because if you do that, if you're in la-la land, you're going to trip and you're going to fall if you become totally ignorant to the facts. The world is definitely here, okay? This is New York. Just take a couple subway stops and it's all around you. You don't have to go anywhere because the world is here. The facts are here. But what I think inside of my own mind is my business and nobody else's. And I love the fact that I can think for myself. What I think on the inside of my mind is mine. It's my business. And I happen to believe there is a spiritual center in my mind and in yours. And I happen to believe that it responds to me endlessly and it responds to you. So I always say, mind in me knows what to do. And it does it. Spirit of life in me and through me gives me the right ideas every time. And I accept them. And I use them with joy and with enthusiasm and power. There's an old phrase, and this could bother a couple of you or a few of you, that I'm going to paraphrase as an affirmative treatment. And I say, for mine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. And when I say it that way, when I paraphrase, you might be a little startled by it, but it happens to be the truth. Mine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. All right. And so ends today's lesson. And so it is.